Hello and welcome to another review and recap for Survivor 50 in the hands of the fans, this time for episode 8, and what an episode we got. We got another twist thrown in there by Jeff with the double duos of everybody pairing up, as well as we finally got the payoff of Rick and Christian's hidden idol at Tribal Council, and honestly, it went off better than I had even imagined. But we'll get into all of that in this review and recap. Let's put a pin in that for now, and let's start off where last episode left off, and that was Dee being voted out and everybody coming back to camp. Jonathan and his Honor and Integrity Alliance are happy with the results of Dee going. Aubrey doesn't have her idol anymore. Everything is going pretty well except for the target on Coach. Coach's name has been thrown out there over and over and over again, as well as he led the vote to get Dee out. Now everybody is trying to tell Coach, lay low, calm it down, and Coach is kind of taking offense to this, as well as just being annoyed that he is being told that he's coming off a bit too strong to everybody at camp. We wake up the next morning and we even have a meeting of the minds between Jonathan, Stephanie, and Chrissy about how can we cool things down around Coach, because we need him for the numbers. Especially going up against the players who are in the middle, which is Christian, Rick, Aubrey, and Emily. Those are the core 4 middle players, as people are calling them. But Stephanie, Jonathan, and the Integrity Alliance is like rolling 7 strong, so it shouldn't be too much to worry about, right? Somebody who wasn't a fan of what happened at Tribal Council was Tiffany. Dee was voted out, as well as Tiffany got 4 votes. But there is a little bit of an olive branch reached out to her when Ozzy takes her aside and says, look, I voted for you, I was pressured by Coach. They seem to strike up a bond and a connection in this moment. I think it was really smart for Ozzy to go and kind of like scoop Tiffany up. She lost Camilla, she lost Dee. Now is the time to talk with Tiffany, get her on your side, get her on your numbers, and Ozzy is playing a really solid strategic and social game at this point. Now this is around the time a boat makes a surprise trip to camp, hands off some mail to Ozzy, and Ozzy reads it, telling the players to divide in pairs, with one person being left over. Now there is a handful of people that are looking at that leftover spot and is like, that's my get out of jail free card. Because so many people want to go to Exile or whatever that spot will be, they decide that they're going to put their shot in the dark in a bag, they shuffle it up, and Coach picks out Suri. So when we get to the reward and immunity challenge, the pairs are Jonathan and Christian, Joe and Tiffany, Ozzy, Stephanie, Chrissy, Coach, Rizzo, Emily, Rick, and Aubrey, with Suri on the side. Now this is where we get the layout of the twist. Jeff calls this the double duo twist, not my favorite title. You will not only compete in pairs, but you could leave in pairs. So essentially this is a double elimination, where whichever pair wins immunity will both be safe in Tribal Council. Everybody will get their own individual vote, but you're voting for a pair. So 2 people at the end of this will be eliminated. I found it funny that Chrissy had the biggest reaction to this, knowing that she was tethered to Coach. Now, before we get to the immunity challenge, Jeff tells Suri that she'll be heading off to Exile and she has to go right now. So Suri leaves, and Jeff gets into the rules where he states that everybody will be doing an obstacle course, using a ball to put it on a track, catch it on the other side, then pass the ball back and forth using a pair of paddles. Once you sink it into the net, then you and your partner will have to put together a bridge using plank puzzle pieces. The 3 teams to finish this part 1 first will go on to part 2, which then they will use 2 sticks to get a ball out of a cage. Then they'll have to do that tabletop maze game where they'll have to work together to get 2 balls at the finish line. The pair to finish part 2 first will win immunity, but also win a spaghetti dinner. This challenge was action-packed, there was constant movement, as well as part 1 was super close, as well as part 2 was unbelievable. And truly, I had my heart racing the entire time. So in part 1, the top 4 performing teams were Joe and Tiffany, Rick and Aubrey, Stephanie and Ozzy, and Christian and Jonathan. Joe and Tiffany got out to an early lead, being able to get their ball from the track first, sink their ball using the paddle first, finish up their bridge first, and finish first going into part 2. Stephanie and Ozzy are comp B, so it's no surprise that they got second place heading into part 2. Where this game gets close is Rick and Aubrey, Christian and Jonathan on the bridge puzzle. Truly, there is like one plank separating each team in who will get that third place and the last spot in part 2. It looked like Jonathan and Christian did not have the good communication skills, no good teamwork, whereas Rick and Aubrey stayed calm, cool, and collected. They had the one plank lead and they never gave it up, and they were able to get that last spot going into part 2. Now, part 2 went almost exactly the opposite of part 1. Where Rick and Aubrey, who was last to get into part 3, got out to an early lead. I thought that they were going to take this thing easily, but they had a few mess ups on the maze, not working well with each other, and it kept on going out of bounds. This is where Ozzy and Stephanie get their ball, and then I thought they had this one in the bag. Because once Rick and Aubrey messed up, you had Ozzy and Stephanie making quick work of this maze. They got the ball all the way to the end, and then it just completely went out of bounds. That didn't just happen once, it happened twice. They could have taken this game and immunity, and Stephanie could have gotten her favorite tiramisu like that, but they left the door wide open for Tiffany and Joe, who were struggling mightily to get this ball out of the cage. It felt like they were lagging so far behind, but they were still in the game because nobody had dunked even one ball. So they put the ball in their maze, they got the first one. Eventually, Ozzy and Stephanie were able to get a ball, but Joe and Tiffany had this thing down, lock pack. They win immunity, and they have an incredible pasta dinner with each other, to where it seems like they strike up a bond, strike up a connection with how well they worked in the challenge. So much so that Joe confesses to have voted for Tiffany, and then on top of that tells her that I promise to never write your name on parchment ever again. They shake on it. Tiffany, who is at the bottom of everybody's hierarchy, is now gathering so much numbers, heading further into the game. Let's take a look at what's going over on Exile with Suri. As she gets closer to the beach, she's noticing that there are a ton of coconuts everywhere. So she gets on the beach, she sees this giant hourglass and rules. Now, somebody who hasn't watched Survivor since like season 41 or season 42, I saw the hourglass and I freaked for a second. But it was only to keep time, no hammers or smashing of hourglasses anywhere in sight. But the rules for Suri were that there were 2,000 coconuts on Exile Island. She needs to find the one with the phoenix symbol on it. If she finds it within the allotted time in the hourglass, she could get back onto the boat, head back to camp, and she'll be able to vote in tribal council. If she doesn't find it, well, she's just gonna stay on Exile Island. Suri reads the rules, turns over the hourglass, and is flipping over these coconuts, checking them as quickly as possible. There is a point where she gets overwhelmed. I mean, it's 2,000 coconuts. It's finding a phoenix in a coconut stack. I mean, if she takes the wrong left turn or right turn, she could doom herself from ever finding it. So at one point, she gets overwhelmed, she gets emotional. We get this like inspirational montage of seeing her in past Survivor seasons overcoming hardships and adversity. It was in this moment that I was like, there's no way she's not gonna find it. They're not gonna show this like inspirational montage to then just have the boat just driving off without her. And pretty much right after that montage and after she gets a drink and takes a breath, she gets back to looking and she eventually finds the phoenix. She is so excited, she is so happy, and she jumps back in that boat and she is heading right back to camp, which is great news for Rick and Aubrey. Because the word around camp is, let's get rid of the people in the middle. And truly, when you look at the pairs, there's people shielded all over the place. I mean, Tiffany's name came up at one point, but now she has immunity, as well as she was paired up with Joe. Christian is a part of the middle, but he's paired up with Jonathan. Rizzo was newly inducted into the Four Horsemen Alliance, so even though Emily is in the middle, Rizzo is keeping her protected. Everybody seems protected except for Rick and Aubrey. Now, if only Aubrey didn't feel peer pressured to use her idol last tribal council, because if she had it this time around, it would be a no-brainer. No surprise here, Emily is pushing for Coach and Chrissy to be voted, while Rizzo and Ozzy talk, and without Suri there, they agree that maybe it's better to get rid of some of the people in the middle, Rick and Aubrey. I mean, Rizzo really wants to get rid of Rick and Aubrey because why get rid of Coach? I'm part of the Four Horsemen. That's some numbers I have in my back pocket, so I want to keep them safe. Now, after Suri returns and gets the lowdown from Ozzy, being like, well, it's between Rick and Aubrey and Coach and Chrissy, Suri's like, whoa, this is the perfect time to get rid of people who are on a definitive alliance. Why not take the chance of going up against Coach and Chrissy, getting a 2-for-1 deal? And Ozzy goes, why didn't I think of that? Cirie talks to everybody, holds office hours. Chrissy tells Cirie about wanting to vote Rizzo and Emily. So when Rizzo sits down, Cirie uses that to persuade Rizzo to go for Coach and Chrissy. The only person who seems to not be in on the Coach and Chrissy bandwagon is Joe. No surprise there. Now, speaking of Coach, you might be wondering, what is he doing amidst all of this talking, all of this chattering, especially with his name coming up? Well, Coach was advised by his partner Chrissy to go sit in a hammock and lay low. I found this funny because earlier on in the season, at the Kahlo camp, you had Coach talking to Chrissy being like, hey Chrissy, you gotta calm it down. Everybody wanted to vote you off, so you need to just... And now we jump forward to this episode where Chrissy, tethered to Coach, goes, hey Coach, yeah, you just talk way too much. People want to vote you out, so how about you... It looks like the numbers have swayed from Rick and Aubrey over to Coach and Chrissy, but there is one fail-safe. Break glass in case of emergency at Tribal Council. Now we go to Tribal Council, and normally I kind of bypass all the conversations or questions or answers. People normally answer them vaguely anyways. But in the middle of Joe talking, you have Rick kind of looking around, trying to find his best opportunity to get up in front of everybody and go grab that fake idol. And right when Joe was done talking, Jeff turns the attention over to Rick, who then gets up, walks over, moves a big rock next to the giant fire, grabs an idol, and says that I'm getting this to keep me and Aubrey safe tonight. Now this sends everybody into a frenzy. Jonathan, Stephanie, Joe, Coach, they're all whispering, they're all talking, they're all getting up. I am getting goosebumps just thinking about this because you have Stephanie who is in a panic. She is like trying to strong arm Christian into getting Rick Devens to show him the idol. She's like, make him show it to us. Make him show him to you. And Christian's like, I don't want anything part of this. And then in the middle of Jonathan going up and whispering in people's ear, Rick is commenting, being like, well, I'm glad I picked it up. It looks like I had something to worry about tonight. Kind of showing the divide in the tribe and where a giant alliance is standing with everybody. I was kind of worried about Rick grabbing it because I felt like maybe the numbers were already settled on Chris and Coach. And when Rick went to go get the idol, I was worried that people would want to change their mind in trying to vote for him to flush it out. But it could have had the opposite effect, as we hear from Stephanie being like, I was supposed to vote for Rick and Aubrey. What do I do now if he has an idol? This sends enough chaos into the vote that Coach decides to forfeit his vote for a shot in the dark to keep him and Chrissy safe. But when Jeff opens up the scroll, it says not safe. You have one vote for Rizzo and Emily. You have one vote for Rick and Aubrey. And the rest of everyone votes for Coach and Chrissy. And I was so thankful for that. This was by far the best episode of the season thus far. This had so many competitions between the reward and immunity challenge, which was close in part 1 and part 2. You had the inspirational story and character arc of Cirie looking for the phoenix on the coconut. You had the double duo twist, which please workshop that name, but you had the double duos twist. That was actually a really decent twist, and I'm not just saying that because I don't like Coach, but there was enough strategy for players to be able to maneuver around the twist, as well as I like that they were able to put themselves into the pairs. It wasn't like some random drawing or anything like that. And we got to see Rick going after the idol, which once Jeff asked for if anybody wants to play any advantages, he told Aubrey that, oh, I can't play it this time. I'm supposed to sneak it out, but I went to go grab it. I can't play it until next Tribal Council, which I thought was a really kind of fun twist of ideas to like maybe have this even go further into next vote. But overall, I thought that payoff was really good, and overall, just a really good episode to get us to the final 11. This game is heating up, and I truly believe that without Coach, this game is widening up. Of that honor and integrity alliance kind of going off to the wayside, another horseman gone, and you don't have that reliable, where it always felt like, oh, we'll get rid of Coach eventually. That people were just waiting and waiting. Oh, he's not well liked. He doesn't do well in challenges. You know, when we need a quote unquote easy vote, we'll just take him out, which I think could really benefit the edit as well as more strategy to come later on in this season. So overall, I'm just really happy about how this episode went down. But now I want to turn it over to you. What'd you think about this week's episode? Let me know down in the comment section below. What'd you think about the double duo twist of everybody getting into pairs? What'd you think about the immunity challenge? What'd you think about Sarif finding the Phoenix? Did you think that it was a guarantee she was going to find it, or were you worried about her not finding it? As well as, are you surprised that Coach and Chrissy were the ones to be eliminated? And how do you think Rick handled going after that fake immunity idol? Do you think it made a significant difference in diverting votes away from him? Or do you think that the votes were already settled on Coach and Chrissy, and maybe he should have waited maybe another tribal council? What is your thoughts and opinions about everything that happened in this week's episode? Let me know down in the comment section below. I want to hear what you have to say. And I want to give a special shout out thank you to everyone who supports me over at patreon.com/AngelCakeVids. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's watching this video up to this point. I'll be back really soon with more Survivor content, more challenge content, more content in general. But until then, peace.